Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
Today, we are talking with award-winning broadcast journalist Steve Chamraz. Steve began his TV news career as an intern at TMJ4 in Milwaukee. He worked in many markets, including Madison, San Francisco, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Chicago, before returning years later to TMJ4. Today, he co-anchors the 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and 6 p.m. news. And before he hosted the show, Milwaukee Tonight. We'll talk about that in a little while. Dan and I worked with Steve and Madison at WKOW TV in the mid-1990s, and we are so glad to catch up today on old news. Welcome, Steve.
Hey guys, I haven't seen either one of you in 23, 24 years, so this is a treat.
Yes,
It
you
is
said
great.
you
It's a treat
left.
for us.
You left in July of 2000, and I left in early 2001. Yeah, it's been 23, 24 years.
And even back then, I mean, you worked the morning shift and I worked that night shift. So our paths, if we saw each other, somebody was having a bad day.
Yeah.
Right. It
So
was
it's-
rarely that we
Totally.
would. Yeah, you're totally right.
It's either I had to be in early in the morning for something, although I filled in the morning show a couple of times. Those are some of my first times getting to anchor, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember first meeting you, Steve, and back then we called you Shammy. Do people still
Yep.
call you Shammy?
People still call me Shammy. That is the nickname. Those who know me call me that.
Awesome, great. Well, if I happen to slip into that, you won't get mad at me, so that's good. So back then, Steve, you had just started. I think it was like late '90s, like '98 or something like that. And I remember, like you said, we didn't cross paths much, but you came over and sat on my desk, and you were talking about like using the internet to do research for stories. And you were like one of the first guys I ever knew who was like actually using the internet to be a journalist. And I was like, oh, well, I was like the old guy, like, oh, that'll never work,
Get
but
off my lawn.
you clearly turned it into something that worked very well for you. So that was one of my first memories of meeting you. And then of course, then you filled in as an anchor, and I was like Brett Favre, not wanting to leave the anchor desk because I knew, boy, this guy's good. I'm never going to get back on the anchor desk.
You're too kind. And I remember that dumpy old KOW newsroom when I got there. It was like late June of '98. I was just like a month and a half out of college. There was one computer in the newsroom that had internet access, and it was up. There was the lower level of the newsroom. Then there was that one step up, which is I think where your desks were, that kind of anchor pod up there. And there was that one computer where you could get on the internet. And that's probably why we ran into each other, is because I was up there at the one computer where we could log on. Everything else, it was just like a newsroom, whatever the newsroom software was at our desks. And then for our last year there, they finally gave everybody the internet at their desks. And wow, I mean, that was night and day. It was like in 1999, the lights came on in the newsroom and everybody had the internet.
We had to answer email.
Right?
Yeah. And update the website.
So the room I'm sitting in used to be the WKTI radio studio. And when Scripps acquired the journal stations, they eventually spun off the radio. So we have all these radio studios we don't know what to do with. So we've soundproofed the room, and it's just a room where if we have a quick interview to do, we can do it in here. If you got a podcast you want to sit down and do, it's just a little backdrop we can use for that type of thing. But it's crazy that this was when I was the kid here, the kid intern back in the '90s. I mean, there's a glass window there. You'd walk by and you'd see all the big FM DJs in here, spinning records, or it's probably carts back then in the day. But now it's just our little playroom here where we get to do little TV things in.
And
Was
we're
that like
catching you.
Reitman and Miller and those guys?
Yep, Reitman and
That's
Miller.
who I was
We're
thinking of, too.
right here in this space.
I remember.
That's so
Oh,
cool.
that's cool.
We're catching you in the middle of your news day. When did it start? Walk us through what you've done so far today and what is still to come.
So I get in at 9:30, and it's right into the 9:30 editorial meeting, and that lasts about a half hour. Where we go through all the ideas that everybody's working on, debate around the table a little bit, and then send everybody out the door. And then we break up, okay, this is the list of assignments we have. And we have a ridiculous number of reporters right now. We have more people
Really?
working here than I can ever remember. So we get our list of assignments, and then we break it up over the shows. We have so many, we'll save somebody for the morning the next day. And so somebody every day winds up working for the 6 a.m. hour the next day. Story we think will play well in the morning. And then I'm out in the newsroom, and it's a couple hours of, email and working with producers. What are you thinking? And then 12:15, got another little meeting. It's a quickie, just 15 minutes. Where's everybody stand? It's the plan we cooked up with at 9:30. Is it still good? Are we okay? And then we take the temperature, and then I'm out to lunch for an hour until 1:30, and then, then I'm back in show prep mode. I write the open for the 5. We do a pre-produced open for the 5. So sometime between 1:30 and 3, I write that, and then at 3 o'clock we tape it, and then it's the last dash through scripts to get ready for the 4, and then like 3:30, 3:40, I like to be making my way to the studio, get in the chair, go through scripts one last time, and then I'm on the, it's you're blasting off on the great news coaster at that point, because I'm basically in the studio from 4 until 6:30. So because it's the hour news at 4, half hour at 5. We get a little break for nightly news at 5:30, but I'm still in the studio. We have teases and things to tape. So maybe I get back to my desk in the newsroom for 5 or 10 minutes. But then by 10 till, I'm back at the desk ready to go on the air at 6.
And until recently, you were also doing Milwaukee Tonight.
Yeah.
But then you were moved to the 6.
Milwaukee Tonight was a treat. So coming out of the pandemic, we realized we wanted to do something different because everybody was burned out. I mean, the viewers were burned out. We were burned out. I described it as in 2020, we would stand in front of a fire hose of awful every day, and then relay that back to the audience. And it was tough. So we got the opportunity. We got the 6:30 half hour back at local control, and we said, let's do a different show here. And so we wanted to celebrate community at 6:30. And so we clean sheet of paper, created the show from scratch. They gave us resources, which is amazing. I mean, when do you get resources anymore? But we had a dedicated reporter and photographer every day. We went live places. It was, the cool restaurant in town, the hidden gem that you've never heard of before, the people, your neighbors who are doing cool things. It was a great way just to kind of, from 4 to 6:30, you get all the awful you need. From 6:30 to 7, let's tell you, here's all the people doing stuff right in your community. And I got to do that for a little over 2 years before I handed it off to another anchor here in the building. And it was just what we needed at just the right time.
Very cool.
Well, a couple of things you just mentioned too, Steve. You said you had resources, and then before you said you have a ridiculous number of reporters in the newsroom, which is something that would be counterintuitive to what we hear a lot about in the news industry. A lot of people are making cutbacks, and there's less resources and things like that. But it sounds to me like you guys might be going against that trend a little bit there at TMJ4.
So our company has a strategy where they reevaluated what they have people doing in their newsrooms. We don't have as many photographers as we used to, but we have more multimedia journalists who are out there covering our communities for us. It was, how do we get more stories from the communities where people live? And, it's a mixed bag. I love photographers. Everything I learned as a young reporter, I learned from going out on the streets with great photographers. I mean, because working with a Zwicker, working with a Shivi, names we know, they were the ones that taught you how to do the job when you were green out of school. Yeah, you had some experience, you knew the rough outline of what you're supposed to do, but the practical, hey, I have 8 hours, I've got to turn something. Put me with somebody who's done this for 20 years, and they're going to get me through the end of the day. Those first couple of months when I'm still getting my feet under myself. I love photographers for that. So that's the one thing I think a lot of stations miss when they go the MMJ route. But I get it. We're also getting, I mean, we have at least one reporter in every county in the viewing area right now, embedded in those counties, and we're looking to hire another for a county where we don't have anybody right now. So it's an advantage that nobody else in this market has.
Yeah, that's good to hear too, because we hear of so many places that aren't getting covered, so many, especially those smaller areas within a larger market that are basically news deserts. And then when you have reporters in there like your MMJs, at least something's getting covered. And hopefully once they're there for a while, they bring that to the table and, beef up the news that they're getting from those outlying areas. So that's great to hear.
I mean, there's news in these places. There are stories.
Absolutely.
It's just, you've got to put someone there to find them on a regular basis. Sheboygan County, for example, when I first got here, the second go round, like 15 years ago, I was a nightside reporter, and I'd wind up in Sheboygan a couple times a month. I mean, for a smaller community, Sheboygan punches above its weight with weird news. And I'd be, they were trying to recall the mayor who was having troubles with alcohol or something, and there were huge fights in there. I think they call it a common council up there. So, I'd be up there a lot for things like that. Now we have somebody there, and it's not somebody who lives in Milwaukee parachuting in. When that story happens, we have somebody who hopefully knows the people who are there and can do it the service it deserves.
Yeah, because you have so much more confidence too as a reporter when you're there and you're covering that area.
Right. I'd walk into the room and I don't know any of the players. Mackenzie, our reporter up there, hopefully she's learning the names, and they know her, and they can connect a lot easier than I did back in the day.
Are you doing any investigative journalism like you've done in the past now?
Not as much as I used to. Things kind of tapered off for me. We wrapped up a big project last year called Project Drive Safer, and I was I kind of did the tent pole stories. It was a year-long project. We reported on reckless driving every day for a year, and I did some of the bigger investigative pieces in that project. And when that ended, my schedule also got shifted to do more hard news during the day. So I don't have as much time to do that work, but I'm always still, I'm working on some big interviews right now. I sat down and I interviewed someone the other day, and we'll turn that in the next week or two. So if I want to do something, there's an opportunity to do it. It's just not part of my big expectations of my job anymore.
Of your daily life. Was investigative work what you enjoyed the most when you were a reporter, or were there other genres of stories you liked the best?
I liked it all. Being an investigative reporter was great because you got, at least the way I came up through investigative reporting, when I worked in Kansas City or when I worked in St. Louis, I did 16 to 20 stories a year. But when you did those stories, you needed to be swinging for the fences every time. They had to deliver ratings. They had to tell a story that no one had heard before. The industry moved away from that mentality where, you got what? I'm paying you what? I need you on the air more often than 16 to 20 times a year. So, can you go do this thing? I'm like, well, yeah, it's not investigative, but sure. So then I went to Chicago and I became a general assignment reporter in Chicago, which was a blast as well. When you get to cover the news in a crazy city like Chicago, which is also home for me, it's where I grew up, that's a dream come true. So both were great. I got to tell great stories as an investigator, and I got to see amazing stuff as a GA reporter. I was a GA reporter in San Francisco as well. And I mean, talk about a crazy city to cover the news in. San Francisco is up there right with Chicago. So both were really, really enjoyable for very different reasons.
Were there hard things about investigative reporting, Steve? Because I know you seem to be one of those type of people who could, the ambush was not something you were afraid to do. And that's not always part of investigative reporting, but sometimes you had to do that. Was that a hard thing for you to do?
I'm older now, I was 27 years old in my first investigative reporting job. And you think You think you're invincible at 26, and you do what the boss, you're a lot more willing to do what the boss is telling you to do at 26,
Right,
27 years
right.
old. So I did a lot of stuff in my early days that I probably wouldn't do now. Although, you know, as part of Project Drive Safer, I did an ambush outside a courtroom with a guy
Mm.
who's the most ticketed man in Milwaukee over a decade, or however we calculated it. You know, you get the interview, or you can get the interview.
Right.
But you do it when you need to do it. That's my take today. If you need to do it, you do it. If there's no other way around it, you do it. Back when I started, the jumping out of the bushes interview was part of the expectation.
Yeah.
Because it added something to the story. And that was kind of the mentality of the newsroom I was working at the time. And I don't do that much anymore. So that probably tells you where my thoughts are on that.
I get it. I always had a level of respect for people who could do it and do it at the right moments, Steve,
Right.
because that's a tough thing. And I think people don't always understand that as viewers or as news consumers. Some people are, put off by it. But sometimes, as you said, it's the only way you could really get somebody on the record, especially back then. Nowadays, people are tweeting and everything's out on social media. But back then, that might be the only chance you ever get to hear from somebody.
Right.
So I always thought, gosh, that's the hardest thing to do. And I just respect those people who did it well. Like Sam Donaldsons of the world and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, if somebody's a public official and they are ducking and dodging, you need to hold them accountable. Accountability journalism is totally my bailiwick. I am there for it. Jumping out of the bushes to create drama in a story, I'm not there anymore.
I get it.
And that's something you grow out of.
Plus, your knees get too sore doing that now. So.
Right.
Some of your investigations have actually changed laws, as I understand. Can you tell us about some of the stories you've done that have had big impacts?
Yeah, I mean, we did back in Kansas City. We did one of the the Chris Hansen, the Catch a Predator stuff.
Yes.
So we did it's funny. TMJ4 did the very, very first To Catch a Predator with the people behind it. And then we saw it in Kansas City, and we found a way to grow it into what looked more like what you saw on Dateline NBC. I don't want to say anybody ripped anybody off, because I don't want credit for anything, because John Mercure here in Milwaukee did it first, and he will always get the credit for that. But we did it real big in Kansas City when I was there, and as a result of it, we got the FBI was able to convince the federal government to build a forensic crime lab in Kansas City, which I believe still exists today, like computer crime lab. And it's funny, the U.S. attorney said, "Come on, let me show you the house that Chamraz built." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, you're kidding me." But he was serious, because our reporting put a light on something that he was able to go to D.C. and say, "Hey, we've got a gap here. Give us some money. Let's throw some people and some resources at it." So that was the first big thing I was able to do. In Kansas City, that was Kansas City. St. Louis. St. Louis was my first actual law. I still have the pen somewhere. The state rep who authored the bill gave me the pen. There were these weird clothing donation boxes that were starting to show up around town in St. Louis. And people thought, if you see a clothing donation box, oh, I'll put this in here. It's like Goodwill.
Right.
It's going to go to charity. It wasn't going to charity. You were giving it to a private company that was taking and then selling your clothes.
Oh my gosh.
And people didn't realize that. It wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but those boxes in Missouri are now required to have a label on them that says you are donating to a for-profit entity by, that was my first big win. Right there. There's been some other stuff here in Wisconsin where we tried really hard. We didn't get it done. Trying to go after illegal daycares in Wisconsin, tougher regulation of illegal daycares. The last story I did back when I did more investigative reporting, I think we're up to 8 or 9 children in a span of years died in illegal daycares in Wisconsin. They exist off the radar until something awful happens.
Right.
So the effort was to try and pull more of these at-home daycares onto the radar so the state can keep tabs on them. So these deaths can be prevented. And then also, I'm not done with it yet. I may take another swing or two at it with the lawmakers I've worked with. Getting tougher on people who drive without a license. In the city of Milwaukee, you can drive without a license and get caught an infinite number of times, and you will never get anything more than a traffic ticket. They will write you a ticket and they will send you. So there's really no incentive to have a driver's license in the city of Milwaukee, which is part of the reason why we have the reckless driving problem we have here. So many people just living outside the system. We got really close. It got out of the Senate and it didn't make it out of committee in the Assembly last session. They may take another run at it next year. So.
Can you tell us about, you also did an investigation that involved Walmart, and that ended up really getting food to some people who might not have been getting food before. Explain how that all worked.
Yeah, this was also in St. Louis. I had a really good time in St. Louis. We did some great stories there. My producer, Steve Chamraz, happened to be shopping at it was a Walmart or a Sam's Club, and he was there late in the day, like 8:30, the hour before closing or whatever it was. And he saw these workers just clearing shelves of baked goods. And he said, "What are you doing with all that?" He says, "Oh, this goes in the trash." "What do you mean it goes in the trash?" "Oh, it's sell-by dated. It's all got to go." And we talked to some people. And I said, that doesn't have to happen. Other stores, we went to other big grocery chains. I think Schnucks is a big St. Louis grocery chain. We went to them and said, no, we give that to the food pantry. Apparently there was a liability issue.
There was probably some legal issue.
Yeah, Walmart and Sam's Club didn't want the liability, if I'm remembering it correctly. So there was a Good Samaritan law that was passed that said, no, this is okay. You can do this. You're not going to be held accountable if somebody gets sick from your food donation. And then Walmart changed its corporate policy. And I remember shooting the stand-up. Is it still called the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis? It's where the Rams played back when St. Louis had an NFL team. It was the size of the field inside the Edward Jones Dome, like up to the 300 level in a year, if you piled all the food up that was getting thrown out. And that was just a low ball estimate.
Gosh.
Sure.
So we had one person say it's just a sin that much good food was going in the trash. But at the end of the day, everyone did the right thing.
Yeah, it was, quite an accomplishment to get a large ship like Walmart to change course and,
Yeah.
get that food into the hands of people who need it.
They never admitted it was us that did it. They never gave us an interview. It was just, hey, Walmart announces this great new policy. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we take the quiet satisfaction of knowing that we
tip of the hat. Yeah.
that we could have put some pressure on this big company to do the right thing. So if that's what happened, Walmart, if you're watching, nice job.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
hey, you mentioned before too, you grew up in the Chicago area and then you ended up in Milwaukee. So I think you went to school at Marquette, right? I remember that because I went there for a little while too.
Yeah, I moved 30 years ago this year. I showed up with some tubs of stuff outside Mashuda Hall on Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee, and I moved my life here. It's crazy to think it's been 30 years since I started college here at Marquette, but it was the best. I moved to Marquette. I get my first internship at TMJ. I'm working at TMJ today. My wife and I, we didn't meet while we're at Marquette. She was a few years behind me, but we met because of Marquette, because the alumni connection. Had I not made that decision, who knows what my life would look like today.
When you were an intern looking around at TMJ, did you ever dream you would be there at the anchor desk for 4, 5, 6?
No.
It's
what the room was full of giants back then. Goucher and Meekins and Jacobs and Nancy Chandler and Lenise Weeks, and it was just amazing to look out on that room and like, wow, I want to do that someday. Wow. be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Yeah. There you are.
Because hey, this could all be yours someday. The day I came back from my interview, it was like December of 2010. I came back from my interview for this job. It was so weird because the building smelled the same as I remembered it from 13 years. Or I hadn't been in the building in 13 years, and it smelled the same. And there's a doorknob on the back door. It's been fixed today, but it was loose, and then it would catch. So you'd have to pull it down like 20 degrees, and then it would catch, and the lock mechanism would open. It was still like that all those years later. And I think in just the last 5 years, we finally replaced it. Just uncanny that you can come to a place and it's the soul of it is still so much the same.
What was the secret to your success of getting back to Milwaukee and then being on the anchor desk?
I think that I was here before. I'm pretty sure that Bill Barra and Steve Wexler, who hired me that go round, they liked that I had roots here. You don't succeed in Milwaukee if you're not really from Milwaukee. And this is one of those towns where they like their own. And even then, someone even said to me, you'll be on the air for 7 years before people start to recognize you. And then it's everywhere. Everyone's going to know who you are, but it takes time to build. And having that background here, I think, was very helpful. I was also willing and available.
That's always an important piece of it, right?
I wasn't under contract at the time, so it was, hey, let's do this whenever you want to. It was the right thing at the right time for me, though. I was in Chicago, when I was in Chicago working as a freelancer, which you can do in Chicago. I mean, because of the unions down there, you can work as a freelancer, as a TV reporter, and still make a living.
Right.
But I wanted the security. I wanted to get married. I wanted to buy a house. Things that are harder to do.
Right.
Yeah.
As a freelancer. So coming here allowed me to kind of grow up. And it was the right thing at the right time. But being from Milwaukee, having the Marquette roots, knowing the newsroom, being able to walk in the room the day of my interview and know 3/4 of the people in the room, that one of the photographers that I worked with as the kid intern walked up to me, shook my hand and said, "Mr. Chamraz, welcome back." I mean, it's that had to have helped.
It's Highway 100, not Highway 100. That kind of stuff, right?
We do like to pronounce it correctly on the air, though.
I know. So since we're talking about Milwaukee, and I agree with you, it's a great place. What are some of your favorite things to do in the Milwaukee area? Some of your touch points there?
We have we have 2 Weimaraners. We live in Whitefish Bay, which is 3 minutes here from the station. Very lucky I have a short commute, but we walk to the lake with the dogs all the time. That we have this inland ocean 6 blocks from our house.
That's awesome.
It's crazy for a kid who grew up on the south side of Chicago, surrounded, you can't walk to water where I grew up, but now I can walk to water every day. Having the lake is amazing. We love a little town called Cedarburg, about a half hour north of here. Just
beautiful.
Great little quaint small town. We'll be there. Their Wine and Harvest Festival, I think, is this Sunday, and we do that every year. That's a nice little, although it's going to be like 85 degrees on Sunday, it is not the day you want to have a harvest festival.
Yeah,
right. And as we're doing this, it's September 18th, so this will get dropped after that, but people will realize, oh yeah, that was back in September.
It is so warm this fall.
Yeah.
I heard someone say this a couple of weeks ago, and I think, hey, that's exactly me. I like to enjoy my mortgage. That is one of my favorite hobbies.
That's a good way to put it. I'm with you,
too.
Steve.
I like to
one of
enjoy
my favorite
mortgage.
things.
We have a great backyard. We remodeled the first floor of the house in our backyard a couple of years ago. Living in it, I was one of those people that, at home for 7 months during 2020, you start looking around at the 4 walls and you're like, we could do something here. Is it time?
Yeah.
So we built a really nice patio for ourselves in the backyard, and we live out there
Oh.
like 9 months a year because we actually put a cover on it. You put a heater out there and you can be out there deep in the November. So a lot of time just hanging out in the yard with the dogs, having friends over. We'll even pull a TV out in the backyard on a Sunday afternoon and watch football. So
Watch Packers, right? The Packers, not the Bears.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
You keep that to yourself, right?
Yeah, that was a very
love
neutral face.
I love the Chiefs.
Oh, there you go.
I'm going with the Chiefs these days because I lived in Kansas City. I've been to more Chiefs games than I've been to any other teams games in the NFL. So Chiefs fan, I am.
And are you a Swiftie too now?
I appreciate Taylor Swift.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's the correct answer for a Chiefs fan.
Well, no, it was her two. She put out 2 albums in the pandemic, Evermore.
Yeah.
And is that the one where she's got the flannel shirt looking at the? But anyway,
I think it is.
She's working with Justin Vernon from Bon Iver on those albums, and so I love Justin Vernon. I love Bon Iver, and that she was with him kind of sucked me in. There was a lot of cross collab going on because she's on some of his stuff, and then there's a side project called Big Red Machine. I think she's on that with some other. There was a lot going on then, so that's kind of where I started to listen to some Taylor Swift.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate her too.
And I read that you're a big Marquette fan still.
Love
you
it.
Still like to go to those games.
I will be there. I got a Shaka sweatshirt. I'm going to start wearing the game because the players come and go, but let's just hope Shaka hangs around for a while.
Yeah. Oh, and he has turned that program. I mean, along with the players, but he has turned that program into something special.
Oh yeah, I mean he got hold of it and made it something so much faster than I think anybody expected him to. So just fantastic.
They've been fun to watch. Hey, was there ever a period? I mean, you've been to a number of stations over the years, and you talked about how you were a freelancer in Chicago. Was there ever a period where you were out of TV news in the last 24 years?
So I've been laid off twice. That is one of the
realities.
That's one of the realities of this business. In 2002, I got laid off from San Francisco. My position was eliminated from the budget, as I was told. So I spent August, September. I spent like 3.5 months on the beach, as we like to call it, and then I wound up in Kansas City, and then in St. Louis. In 2008, we all remember what happened in 2008 with the economy. So that was one of the positions eliminated then. And I was, that was November of 2008. But the good thing is I started as a freelancer in Chicago in December.
Oh, so that was your next move.
That was my next move.
Break there.
So barely a break there. It was a couple of weeks. I was off the air. I was off the air in August, so they paid me out for like 90 days. And then, so I mean, I'm not working, but the paychecks are still rolling into November. So I wasn't on the air for like 4 months, but I only had like a month where I was, unemployed.
So there was never a period where you thought to yourself, maybe I'm like in that 3 months in San Francisco, you never thought, maybe I'll try something else. It's all, I mean, journalism stayed with you and that's what you wanted to keep doing.
I thought of it. Being home in Chicago, I left San Francisco, moved back home in with my folks for a couple of months, just to kind of reset everything. I was 27 then, 26,
still a kid
then. So, moved back in with mom and dad for a couple of months, get my feet back under me. I thought about it because I was in Chicago and I'm like, what could keep me here in Chicago? Because I liked being 27 and living in Chicago.
Yeah.
I did some freelance, writing and TV back then. I looked at some other stuff. When I was doing freelance work in Chicago the second time around, as a reporter, thought about it a little bit, but never really jumped at it. Nothing ever came my way. And then Milwaukee called. My agent at the time sent me an email saying, would you be interested? And there was a trading of emails back and forth, and Bill, the news director who hired me, says, "Don't tease me." So he saw my reel and he was immediately like, "Yep, if this guy was a TMJ4 intern and he wants to come back, we'll take him."
At what point did you get an agent?
I got an agent when I was at KOW.
Really?
Jeff Gillen hooked me up with
Oh.
his agent.
Oh.
And that's what got me from Madison to San Francisco.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Have you stayed in touch with Jeff over the years at all? Or I mean, I know you meet so many people in the business.
I see him on social media every once in a while. Is he still on
Sure.
Facebook? Is he still out there?
Boy, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not real good on that.
I'm going to have to go look for him now. But yeah, he was, last I saw, he was like at Channel 8 in Vegas. And I don't know how long ago that was.
I believe he retired. I do remember that.
Okay.
Yeah,
he
retired
great guy. He was so good to us in that newsroom.
Back in the day.
He made me such a better writer. So remember the 5 o'clock back in the day? It was Wendy and Rachel Kisco and Wendy Warren did the 5 together. One of them was on vacation and the other one called in sick. So Jeff was already subbing on the 5. And they needed me as to emergency anchor in the other chair. And we had the most fun. We called it the Man Show. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Man Show. You know, the two dudes out there, the two female anchors every day replaced with these two guys at 5 o'clock. But I remember writing scripts for that show. And Jeff would say, I see what you did there. Try this. And I mean, I remember the lines. There was something about hybrid. It was something about like hybrid cars, gas guzzlers, or something that just sips. He had a really great way of turning a phrase. Do you want to know a secret about the Beatles? They're going to be paperback writers. He helped me turn that line. It's amazing the things 20 some years ago you remember, those little lessons that stick with you. And Jeff gave me a few of them, and Jeff gave me the agent that gave me my first big job. So
still on the agent topic, I know we've talked with different people about agent, no agent, when they got an agent. That was kind of a leap of faith on your part, I think, to get an agent at that level, just because we were a smaller market. I mean, 80s or something, not making a ton of money. But I'm just thinking Jeff must have really seen in
Steve
you,
was making a ton of money.
no.
you were making millions. No, but Jeff must have really recognized your potential to be like, hey, I can see you could really go places. Why don't you talk to my agent to even have that conversation?
So I'm gonna bite off part of this first. Todd Pritchard hired me in 1998 for the grand sum of $22,500 a year.
Right. If people have listened to this podcast before, they know that nobody made a lot of money.
Nobody made a lot of money. And then at my 1 year, I got $23,500 a year, and then Todd's like, Steve, so time for you. So you're now at $24,500 a year. I'm like, Todd, thank you, but I'm going to San Francisco. So
please tell me that was a significant increase.
I was going to say, let's hope it was a big jump.
Here's the thing. I mean, it was a $100,000 a year job. I was 25 years old, making $100,000, moving to San Francisco.
Quite a hop.
What a leap.
Do you know how expensive? My rent in Madison, I lived at High Point and something or other out there on the west side of town, $600 a month, and I had a pool.
Yeah.
700 square foot apartment in San Francisco cost me $2,400 a month.
Yikes.
There's a third of my take home. Oh, no, like almost half my take home.
That's like 4 times what you were paying in Madison.
Oh yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, my salary quadrupled, but my rent quadrupled.
Right.
So it was. I love San Francisco. I'm glad I did it, but it was a rough couple of years because you just you don't make enough. It's the business doesn't pay. I mean, you're going to say $100,000. That's a lot of money. Yeah, it is on paper. It is, but when you're in a city that expensive as San Francisco, I mean, it was crazy. But
Now
yeah,
the second part.
yeah, Jeff was good to me. I mean, he taught me how to do stuff better. He taught me the difference between a live shot and a lounge act. You don't get too goofy out there. But then he's like, hey, oh, no, the reason he gave me his agent, I remember this because we worked for Shockley back then.
Right.
And Shockley bought a station in Rochester, Minnesota. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Yeah, I do remember this.
They bought the Fox station in Rochester, and they asked me if I would want to go be the anchor at the station in Rochester, and anchor and kind of like be a managing editor up there as well, which is a huge. I mean,
Sure.
What a nice thing to ask you to do.
Big leap, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff saved me from that. He said, Steve, don't do that.
Oh, really?
Talk to this guy.
Oh.
So it was like a 6-month so I signed with the agent, and then it's a 6-month process of polishing yourself to the point where you're ready to go. I was a rough stone, and I'd send my agent tape, and he'd say, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. Send me tape. I would, and it was just evolve, and then finally there's enough where we actually send out little tapes back in the day. Now everything's just a link in a Vimeo file. You get enough tape, you send it out to people, and then they want a second tape.
Yeah.
And then you got to get more together, and so the agent really works to polish you at that point, and that was valuable. That really helped me a lot. Did my agent maybe push me to? I was a morning reporter in San Francisco, which was grueling. I was a nightside lead story reporter at KOW when I left. It was a little bit of a change for me. I'm out there doing the live shot outside the dark building at 5 a.m. And it was a lot different than the work I wanted to be doing. So it was very good in some ways. It taught me I can do anything, doing 2 years of that job. But I also knew I wanted to do more, which is why I wound up in Kansas City next as an investigative reporter.
Right.
I didn't want to go to Phoenix and be, another breaking news reporter, which would have been a great market. It's another big market. I significantly dropped down in market size. Kansas City, I think, was like 30 at the time, but I got to do a much bigger job. And when I did the math, cost of living wise, I was making more money than I was in San Francisco.
Back in the Midwest again. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that is not an uncommon trajectory in the television news business, is it? For, people might see it as you're jumping back market size, but when you're taking different types of jobs, that you hear that quite often, isn't it? Something you hear quite often.
Don't be afraid to say that this thing didn't work and I'm gonna go this way. I mean,
great advice, right?
You've got to be able to pivot. Being a big market morning show reporter wasn't the thing for me. Being an investigative reporter, that was great. It was I got to grow in so many different ways in that job, and then I got to be an investigative reporter in St. Louis. And then I was doing my work in Chicago, market number 3, again, big market. Don't be afraid. I'm not getting the contract here. They're not hiring. Chicago's a market where you can survive as a freelancer and eventually get hired, and it just wasn't happening because the economy wasn't there at the time. But there was a job here, so don't be afraid to come this direction. I've been here 15 years now, and now I'm the old guy with the white hair in the newsroom. So,
and having a good quality of life.
My quality of life is amazing. I get to go. I go home for lunch every day. I let the dogs out. I'm home at 6:45 every night. I'm going to get off the air here, run home, put some clothes on. I'm going to go to the Brewers game. So it's.
Hope you're sitting in the shade.
Oh, it's a 6:40 start. So.
Oh, you're good then. Yeah,
I don't think it's really much of an issue at 6:40 at night.
I guess it's late in the day here.
Yeah, but it's things turn out well. If you're thoughtful about things and you're willing to pivot if something isn't working, don't be afraid to rip the tablecloth off the table every once in a while, because things will settle out the way they're supposed to.
Do you find yourself now in that position that Jeff was in with you? Do you find yourself having those opportunities to mentor other people in the newsroom? Because you are the guy with the white hair now.
I'm the old guy now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be.
I don't want to say that.
I'm gonna be 50 in 13 months.
Bragger.
He's just a baby.
Oh,
kid.
hey, I'll take it. You guys want to call me that? I will not.
You're in the prime of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the one that some of our reporters come to when they want help with things, and it's really great to see. We had one of our young reporters in the newsroom get her first 2 Emmy nominations. And, I walked over to her and I hugged her. I told her how I'm so proud of you. I know you worked so hard to get these.
Right.
It's to encourage and to teach and pass on little nuggets, that have been given to me over the years. It's my job to pass them on to somebody else now. So,
well, and you've won a lot of awards yourself. I happen to have a little list here. Let's see, National Headliner Award for Investigative Reporting, a finalist for the Investigative Reporters and Editors Award, won 10 Regional Edward R. Murrow Awards, 9 Mid-America Emmy Awards, 8 Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Awards, and 3 awards from the Milwaukee Press Club. That's quite the list.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's all. Underachiever right here.
Fantastic.
Was that all for
Congrats.
investigative work, or was that for some other stories as well?
A mix of stuff. I have my favorite award. I have an Edward R. Murrow for news writing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it's crazy because I am so many of the news writing. It was a regional Murrow. So many of the regional winners for Murrows are just the great flowery TV storytellers. Your Boyd Hooperts, your John. I think it's
John Stofflet.
Stofflet was another one. It's funny. John Stofflet was one of the resume tapes I watched when because John and I had the same agent for a while.
Oh, really?
He was working as a reporter, and I think it was in Seattle back in the day.
Yeah, at King.
Yeah, he was at King. He did great stuff there. Wayne Friedman.
Awesome.
We talked with John in season 1. Go back and watch.
You go back. Put link. Click here.
That's
click
right.
here.
Oh, that's a little advanced for us. Maybe we'll figure it out. Click here.
Click here. Link down below.
Yes.
But those are the guys that would always win the regional Murrows for news writing. And I submitted a compilation of investigative pieces, and that investigative storytelling was able to win a news writing award. That I thought that was pretty cool. So that's the favorite award I have. I keep 1 Emmy on my desk. It's my one and only Chicago Emmy. Milwaukee, Chicago are the same region for Emmy competition. So I have 1 on my desk, and that's for environmental reporting. I keep 1 out in my den at home. That's for investigative reporting. And I gave my mom and dad 1. But all my other awards are in a box in the basement. I don't look at them. I don't think of them.
When we talked with Lisa Fielding and about her experience during COVID, she was saying that, after going so hard, the long hours, the terrible news, all of the things that were happening during that time, it was after that she kind of felt a mental health crisis almost, that she was like, oh my gosh, everything was really weighing on her once the adrenaline stopped. Yeah. Did you experience that? And if so, how did you address that?
I think I rode the COVID wave pretty well. It started with my news director saying, we need to make a plan to get you from home. And we need to do that before we are told to do that by corporate. So I had a good sign it was coming. And while we were making my plan where we were coming up with my plan, my wife started working from home. My wife is a medical clinical psychologist. She works in mental health, which was very helpful to have around during that time. It was also great. It was also great to have a coworker at home. She was in her office at home, doing medical care, doing patient care all day long. I'm in the next room doing TV. And we had no more than 10 people in this building at any time during the COVID. For 7 months, I worked from home, and I was always from home. I did my job from my den for 7 months. I didn't mind it. It was between Zoom and cell phones and meeting each other in the parking lot to hand stuff off. Again, I live 3 minutes from the station, so I was able to swing by if I needed equipment, or if you have to shoot trade the little cards for video purposes or whatever. Really easy to do. But you miss that. Newsrooms are social places. I did miss that. The mental grind of it, thank God, it never really got to me. I don't know if I'm just incredibly resilient or in denial. I don't know, but I was able to get through it pretty well. But when we went down to Chicago in December, and we saw and felt how bleak the city was at Christmas time, yeah, I get how somebody,
the life is gone.
I get how somebody who lived and worked in that city could have felt worn down by the year. So this is me in this moment appreciating what I had back then. I never put the two together until this moment. But yeah, I get where Lisa's feelings came from, because
I think it's a great analysis, really, because like you said, you walk into those big cities that are just full of life and energy when they're churning like they should. You go there and it almost has kind of a post-apocalyptic feel to it.
It's how it felt. There was a Zara on Michigan Avenue. There was like a line. They were only letting, Zara is like a 4-story store, and they were only letting a handful of people in at a time. And there's this line just wrapping for 2 blocks, and everyone's wearing masks. Things I didn't see. Number one, Wisconsin had a little different take on the pandemic than Chicago did. And it's just, it's a center population versus a suburb.
Yep.
So, we had very, very different experiences from here to there.
Hey, we're going to let you get back to your life in general here. We always ask a couple of questions, and I just want to ask you the one I like to ask people. I call it first, worst, and thirst. So your first job ever, Steve, was what?
First, I delivered papers.
You were a paper delivery boy?
I delivered the Southtown Economist.
Wow.
Is that like the shopper?
It was the afternoon newspaper. It was Monday through Friday, and then Monday through Friday afternoon, and then Sunday morning. It was for the south suburbs of Chicago. The Southtown. It was the Southtown Economist, and then became the Daily Southtown. And now,
so you've been in the news business your whole life?
Oh,
really?
Since I was like 11, yeah.
And did you have an interest in journalism back then, or is just the job that you could get when you were young?
Junior high, I always wondered why we didn't have a junior high school newspaper. And I always wanted to see if we could get one started. And then I got to high school, and I got on the high school paper, and then, this is what I want to do. So I did kind of figure out in high school, this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and it stuck. And so you can say either what was your worst or your best job. I don't want
to. My worst job, that morning shift in San Francisco.
Yeah,
that was it. It takes a special person to work those hours, and it was you'd show up at work, you'd get in a live truck, and you were in that live truck until the end of your day. And it was you, and if you had a grumpy photographer, good luck, because you're with that you're with that guy for 9 hours.
Yeah.
And there's no changing. So,
and at that time of the day, it's pretty easy to be grumpy.
Yep.
Yeah. And how about something? Are you still thirsting to do something, Steve? What's out in the horizon for Steve Chamraz?
I'm pretty fortunate to be where I am. I've looked. I auditioned, interviewed for a job earlier this year. thought about it real hard. I'm really content where I am, where we are here. But, you know, if there's a chance to ever go back home in a role like this, I would certainly entertain it. You know, I don't have an agent anymore. The recruiters, at this level, you don't really need an agent because the recruiters have your stuff, and when you're available, they find you. But one of the recruiters said, "So what's the one thing that you would not say no to if it came calling?" And I said, "Well, if I can do a job like this back home in Chicago, call me up." So it's the only thing
it's out in the universe. So
yeah,
there you go.
Hey, there you go.
There it is. There it is. And I always like to ask about bloopers that have stuck with you over the years. I did find on YouTube a little giggle fest about Flippy,
yeah,
Flippy the burger flipper, which gave me the giggles, which probably earlier before we started the podcast, I was having my own giggle fest over the intro. Maybe I'll blame Flippy for that, getting me going down that path.
There's two things going on in that Flippy video. We're laughing about Flippy, but Carol also mentioned something about her mother.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in the cut that you saw.
It is.
But, Carol likes to there's stuff that's set off the air that Carol and I, because we work together so much, there's just a look.
A knowing glance set
There's
you
a
off.
knowing glance between the two of us about something she said, and that derailed it as much as Flippy did. So,
oh boy.
Yeah, that was an inside joke that just happened to come out on air. The bloopers. When I worked in San Francisco, it was Memorial Day, and we were doing live shots in a cemetery. It was, I believe it was a military cemetery, and we were previewing the events that were going to happen later in that morning. It was 6:30. I'm getting ready to do a live interview with somebody, and it's a cemetery. So sound travels. There's nothing to stop the sound from traveling. And there's a bagpiper who just starts practicing at 6:30 in the morning. just as I'm starting the interview. And I said, we're struggling because we can't hear each other. I said, that's loud enough to wake the dead. And he looks at me, oh, that was a line right there. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not, and so we got through it. But as soon as we're on to the next story and I'm out of double boxes, my phone's in my pocket and it just lit up.
Oh yeah.
And it's the EP of the morning show. Don't you ever. And it was totally not planned. It was not it's just a thing you say in the moment.
Yep.
And so that is Karen Wolferdinger. If you see this, you were the producer of that hour that morning. I apologize again to you. She would on Memorial Day send me a message through Facebook saying "Happy Wake the Dead Day" to you. So,
nice.
Yeah, but
she has a good sense of humor.
That's probably my best faceplant moment so far.
That reminds me of a story. You guys all know Ryan Moore. You remember Ryan Moore? He was a photographer back when you were there too, Steve. He was
the chief for a while, right?
Yes, he was. Yeah. And he's still there in an operational role. But he always told the story of he worked in Milwaukee at one of the stations as a photographer before he came to Madison. And he always told the story. He went to the funeral of a clown. And he walked in, and the clown was in full clown regalia.
Oh no!
And so you walked in, and you could see like the big feet sticking up out of the casket. No. And I kid you not, one of the guys dressed in full clown outfit came up to him as he walked in with his camera and said, "Now don't go making a circus out of this."
Oh my God!
And that's that's his story about
That is-
something like that. It was not on the air, but
That is
you know.
fantastic.
That's good
I know.
stuff.
How do you not?
I'm
how
just
do you not,
picturing the big clown shoes sticking
the
out.
clown shoes sticking out of the
Mm,
out of the casket? But
Oh, boy.
anyway,
and the red nose. That's
there you
good
go.
stuff.
Well,
Is there any advice, Steve, before we part ways here today that you want to share with young journalists coming up?
Learn how to write.
Mm.
That's the most important thing. Good writing is hard to find. You know, we get it's they get younger and younger coming into the newsroom. No, they don't. They're all the same age. I'm just getting older and older. But
Right. Funny how that works.
yeah, it's we just need to keep the high consistent standard of good writing. That's the most important thing.
All right. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate your time. It's been wonderful catching up with you today.
Thank you both. I'm going to go tape the 5 o'clock open now.
All right.
right.
Have a
Steve.
wonderful 4, 5, and 6.
Thanks, guys. Great to
Bye.
see you.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.